Steve, how's it going?
It's going.
You like that intro?
Yeah.
Perfect little intro right there. So today is a fun one. It's something that you came to me that you really wanted to talk about. And full disclosure, when I first started here, you blew my mind watching you work in Excel to the point where I was like, oh crap, like what the hell? These guys are really good at Excel. Like your pivot tables, how fast you work that thing, like blows my mind. How still the calculations, you're just like, let's quickly look at this. Blah, blah, blah. But it's interesting because you want to talk to me about the dangers of using Excel as a TMS.
Yeah. I think it's a great topic for us to go through.
I think it's fascinating for you, just how good you are at it. And like you told me, you're like, oh, it's an Amazon thing. I had to pick up on it, like all that type of stuff. But
yeah,
I mean, Excel's it's a basic tool in business, right?
yeah,
It's included with Microsoft. Most business is done on Microsoft. You're a PC, like that type of stuff. So
yeah.
most people kind of use Excel. They use Excel for a ton of stuff. I mean, marketing wise, you use it for a list. You use it for very simple things. You kind of just manage all that stuff. So why is a freight operator using Excel?
Sure. I think Excel for a lot of different business divisions, whether it's marketing, whether it's transportation, Excel is kind of the first place where people are familiar and comfortable enough to go if they have a need, right? So I think kind of early CRMs are done in Excel, right? Early TMS is done in Excel. Excel is kind of the catch-all for any kind of business process or anything that a company's trying to start to store and build some process around. Usually the first thing they're going to do is pop open Excel and start to work in that tool.
Yeah, because it's a blank tool, right? More or less, there's no need for someone to like create it for you. There's none of that stuff. I mean, you just basically get fields, tons of calculations, visualizations, and pivot tables. So, I mean, that's usually what happens with them. But I mean, just given my experience, like Excel has its pitfalls. It has its dangers. So talk to me a little bit about what do we see? What is some of the dangers with using Excel as a TMS or kind of using it in that role?
Yeah, I think what we see a lot is companies will start in transportation. They'll start to use Excel really as kind of a system of record. So they'll be storing the things that you would expect on any given shipment. You know, where it's coming from, where it's going to, how many pallets is it, how much does it weigh, what carrier is it. Sometimes companies will quote in Excel, so they'll go out to a bunch of different, transportation service providers and they'll record, ABC carrier gave me this rate, ABD carrier gave me this rate, and so on and so forth, so that they can start to look at, some of the pricing activities that's going on their freight. But generally speaking, companies are using it just for that really basic level of information. Where's my stuff going through? Where's my stuff coming from? Where's it going to? Who's carrying it? What's the rate? And that ends up becoming really powerful information because it really is shared pretty broadly across a lot of organizations, right? So eventually a bill is going to come in from that transportation service provider, whether it's a freight carrier, 3PL, broker, whatever it is. There's going to be a bill and finance is going to want to audit that bill, right? So where's the first place that finance is going to want to look to see, hey, shipment identifier 123, how much did that cost? Well, hey, transportation has an Excel document where they put all of that information in one place. Let me go see what that says, right? So all of a sudden you have a system of record, which is, it's basically a database is what they're using Excel as. And now it's becoming an auditing tool all of a sudden, right? Potentially finance wants to do some sort of GL coding, right? So maybe they're looking at what division it's coming from or what division it's going to. So now potentially it's, it's an auditing tool. It's a GL coding tool. What we saw a lot and what we've seen with some of our customers that sales teams are out there selling these products, right? And they want to understand how much something's going to cost, right? How much is a pallet going to cost to get from Massachusetts to Florida? Well, let's go look at our Excel document. Let's go look at our system of record and we can start to benchmark our costs. So I think what a lot of companies find is that, very quickly this goes from being, hey, we have this database, which is kind of a good practice to understand where stuff's coming from and where it's going to. And now all of a sudden they have an audit tool. They have, a geocoding tool. They have a sales, a sales cost kind of forecast mechanism. There's all this stuff that's kind of sprawling out of this Excel document that isn't necessarily the best practice.
And it sounds like the big thing, like when you're using the tool for that many purposes, the typical issues that occur with Excel kind of almost get like
Yeah,
amplified to like a
Yeah,
million because
absolutely,
fat
absolutely.
fingers, poor data, all that type of stuff. I mean,
Yeah,
that's just
sure.
usual Excel stuff, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, everyone's had that experience where they're moving fast in Excel and something's supposed to be 100 pounds and all of a sudden it's 100 million pounds.
Right, right.
If you're shipping 1,000 shipments over the course of the year and that happens, 15, 20, 30 times, they might not all be that exaggerated, but all of a sudden, again, the integrity of that kind of system of record is in question. So, I mean, we see a lot of that. The other thing that we see a lot of is really blank cells.
Right, right, right.
So again, what we kind of thematically, again, you have a lot of people working in that document, right?
Right.
So potentially you have customer service who's putting some kind of an order in there. You have, transportation who's putting in maybe the pallets and the ship weight. You have, finance who's putting in some identifier, and you have all these different kind of departments that are working in this document, and all the while freight is being
Still
picked.
moving,
It's
still
being
going. Yeah,
it's
it's
being
still
picked. It's being staged, and it's
right.
it's going right. So if maybe the freight goes and I'm a sales guy and I'm supposed to put in sales order numbers. But maybe I have a client, I have a big presentation. So what we see a lot of times is actually becomes a data integrity issue
Right.
where, maybe 20, 30% of those cells are blank. So, if you think about you have 1,000 shipments over the course of a year, 10,000 shipments, and, if 30% of the cells are blank, that's a big data integrity problem, right?
Right. Yeah, and I think that one of the kind of the big issues, especially when you're like, okay, well, that's fine. What I'm just going to create a process where I'm making sure my people know exactly what to put in there and do all that stuff.
Yep.
The speed and the velocity of everything kind of occurring and everything
Yeah, sure.
moving and trying to be
Sure.
efficient and looking at those data, like just because it's happening everywhere. The Amazon effect is taking over
Yeah,
transportation. So it's becoming almost impossible with like API that's like
sure. Yeah,
simultaneous.
sure.
You can't.
Yeah, I mean,
There.
Excel doesn't really have any robust data exchange capabilities, right?
Right.
It's not really a great B2B communication tool. So it's not great for communicating with your suppliers and communicating with your customers. And everyone kind of wants that Amazon or FedEx or UPS experience, right?
Right.
It's
Right.
really,
Right.
really easy to buy something buy something online, get a tracking number, click it, it goes right to the website, and
Right. Right.
you know exactly where it is. So people want that experience. They have it in their day-to-day life when they buy, dish soap from Amazon. Why can't they have it when they're shipping a 10,000, pound shipment, across the country for thousands and thousands of dollars? I mean, anyone who's paying attention is asking themselves,
Right.
why can't I see this? Why can't I have, why don't I know where this is? This is, sometimes it's $1 million worth of goods and they don't know where it is, right?
Right.
But if they buy Clorox bleach pods or, something, they'll know exactly where it is,
Yeah.
right? It's
Something
just,
that they're getting like.
there's a little bit of a disconnect there.
Yeah. No, that's a huge disconnect, and it wasn't even something I was thinking about before we
Yep.
got here. So that's fascinating. So I mean, the one thing that's a huge disconnect. That's going to be horrible. But the one thing Excel has going for it, for the most part, more or less, is it's kind of free.
Oh yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
what's
Yeah.
going to be some like key indicators that like, hey, maybe it's ready for me to take my whole freight operation
Sure.
out of Excel? Like, because you're still going to make that argument, right? Hey,
Yeah,
if I'm going
yeah,
to a
yeah.
TMS, if I'm going to this platform, that's going to be time, money, and resources out of my thing.
Absolutely.
Where are indicators? Where's stuff that you're like, oh, maybe it's time to start thinking past that?
Yeah.
Other than the obvious of
Yeah.
like, dude, you can't keep up with business if you're
Yeah,
doing this
yeah.
anymore.
I think I'd first probably start to look at how many different departments are interacting with that document, right? If you have finance, if you have customer service, if you have sales, if you have, maybe some C-suite folks are looking to do some budgeting, right?
Right.
They're interested in how much did I spend on transportation this year? Let me match that up to kind of my payables, and then let's figure out how much we're going to spend next year.
Mhm.
So all of a sudden, you have 5, 6, 7, 8 different departments, and maybe some VPs and some C-level folks who really want high quality information. And everyone's basing all their judgments off a document that has maybe 20% of the cells blank. Like
Right.
it's not a great process,
No,
right?
no.
I think that's kind of an indicator that it might be time to go to a little bit more of a robust system. Other things are if you want track and trace capabilities, that's not something you're really going to get out of Excel. If you want, you want to optimize your freight, you want to look at potentially grouping a couple of LTL shipments maybe and turning them into a multi-stop truckload and saving, saving money, reducing miles. That stuff is hard to do in Excel, right?
Right.
Potentially if you want to get rate quotes from a broad set of carriers or load contracts and understand really specifically what a shipment from A to B is going to cost you. You're estimating in Excel, but you have a contract loaded, for that kind of shipment characteristic in the TMS, and it's going to tell you exactly how much that thing costs. So if you find yourself kind of asking those types of questions, I think then it's really time to start to look at, okay, what are my options in the market as far as TMS?
Right. Because it's not really a oh no scenario. It's more of like the hey, am I ready to take the next step type of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things that we talk a lot about here, and it is, if you go back to it, it's a reason why a lot of these companies are ending up in Excel, is having really good, solid, clean data to communicate with your carriers. So we're going through bids all the time on behalf of our clients, and one of the biggest back and forth communications that we have with the carriers is around data. They're asking questions about that data. They're asking, they want everything broken out in a very granular way. And if you're not, and they want to bridge the gap, one of the things that we do is we'll say, this client represents X amount in spend. Well, if we say that they're spending $10 million a year in less than truckload, and we put on paper, $100,000, does that carrier really feel like they're getting a really broad picture of the types of moves that this company is making? No, not really. They want to see $10 million worth of spend there, plus or minus a little bit, right? We're not giving them the freight costs, obviously, but they want to see, heavy volume of shipments, right? So I think those are some of the things that you should be considering if you're, if you find yourself in that scenario, which a lot of companies are. So many different companies, are talking about this stuff. We hear it a lot. One of the funny things when you go to these conferences is you'll hear these companies talking about, how artificial intelligence and blockchain are going to integrate into their operation, right?
Right.
And then, anecdotally, you'll kind of hear them talking, and they're in Excel doing the TMS activities, just like everyone else.
Right.
Like what kind of blockchain algorithm? I mean, what kind of blockchain storage system or artificial intelligence algorithm are you going to be able to do? You're just not going to be able to do that type of stuff, right?
Right.
It's not the way it's going to work. So I think if that's what you're looking to do, if you really want to be a best in class supply chain, I think there's no really avoiding a transportation management system at this point. It's kind of unavoidable. And there's a bunch of great options out there, really. Whether it's with kind of a management company like us, or there's plenty of great, transportation management service provider, they just do technology and that's all they do. There's a bunch of options out there. So I would encourage anyone to kind of start to explore if they find themselves kind of asking those questions.
Awesome, man. I think that's a great place to wrap. I think you kind of gave a good little perspective of like, hey, here, if some of these things are coming up, or if there's a decent amount of people that are in your Excel doc, or if like, hey, data is extremely high priority for you. There's a tool out there. There's software out there that can really make it like take away that headache.
Yeah, absolutely. I think whether it's a carrier, whether it's your boss, any of those kind of projection-based things that we were talking about, right? So your boss wants a budget, and you say the budget's going to be $6 million, but you only have data to back up, $2 million. How much confidence does your boss really have in that judgment that you're making, right?
Right.
I think it's a great tool for internal practices, for internal best practices, for external best practices, for visibility. I mean, it solves, so many problems in this industry, and at least allows you, at the very least, it allows you to see all of the activity that has to happen over the course of a shipment for your stuff to get picked up to delivered.
Right.
So if you are having problems, you can start to root cause those issues and talk to carriers with a high level of certainty of what's going on. Right. So there's also kind of the benefits of having a ton of information that you can go back to your carrier partners and kind of say, well, it looked good up to here, and then then we went off the rails, right? So deep diving problems is another great benefit of a TMS.
Awesome, man.
Yeah.
How can people get in touch with you? What's the best way?
I think you got to hit up the website. It's
Yeah, no,
abornandco.com.
yeah, definitely. Talk to, I mean, like you said, we're here to talk and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
it's not even, there's plenty out there. And that's one of the things that's kind of cool about here, especially as I'm learning. It's more like you guys are all about the industry. It's not just about Aborn. It's about like freight, transportation, logistics, all that fun stuff. So you guys are always happy to talk about all that. So
LinkedIn, website, whatever.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right, man. Thanks for joining me.
You're welcome.
Hey everyone, thanks for watching Consulting Logistics. Seriously, Steve is ridiculous when it comes to using Excel. He's crazy fast with it. My first day was probably the most overwhelming, was just watching him use Excel. So don't think that for at all we're anti-Excel here at Aborn. It's just one of those things, right? Have you ever run into issues with it? Have you ever had like a nightmare story where you fat fingered some data or you were missing something? Or do you know some hacks? I'd love to know. I mean, just reach out to me, put some comments in there. Let's have a little conversation in this video and get people kind of working and having a communication about like what helps, what freight operators are doing. Be fun. As always, like and subscribe to this video and channel. And if you like what you see, share it with a colleague, share it with a peer, share it with a friend. Let people know. Also, reach out to me. Let me know what you think we should be talking about. I'm more than happy to kind of do the research, get to know some people, talk around, find an expert for you. All right. I'm Kyle McNaught. Peace.